Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going to learn the Stafford Gambit. Let's get right into it. The Stafford Gambit is an opening that trades a pawn for rapid attacks and nasty traps. Perfect if your opponent's unprepared. The Stafford Gambit kicks off with the moves e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. Now, this is a Petrov defense, but if black decides to capture our pawn on e5 here, instead of following the main line of d6, we can instead take a tricky and surprising turn with the move knight to c6. In this position, the most common move is capturing our knight. When they do this, we will recapture with our d-pawn. In this position, white has four main options: either d3, knight to c3, bishop to c4, or e5. In this video, we will cover each of these options. Firstly, let's take a look at the move d3. When white plays the move d3, we can play the basic Stafford move, bishop to c5. We will play this move in almost every single variation. Now here, a very big mistake that lots of players make is bishop to g5. It looks like a good move as they're pinning our knight to our queen. However, it's actually a huge blunder, as we could play knight takes e4. And here, if white just decides to capture our queen, we could play bishop takes f2, check to their king. And the only place where the king can move is e2. Now we can play bishop to g4, a beautiful checkmate. In this position, when we play knight takes e4, even if white doesn't capture our queen, but rather captures our knight, we can still play the same move, bishop takes f2. And if white captures our bishop, we simply win the queen. But if white doesn't capture our bishop, we play the move bishop to g4, forcing them to capture our bishop. Now we simply win their queen. Now here, when we play knight takes e4, what if black doesn't capture our queen, or doesn't capture our knight, but rather plays bishop to e3 to completely block the diagonal? Well, this doesn't work either, because we can play bishop takes e3, and after they recapture, we can play queen to h5, a check. And the only way to block here is with pawn to g3, but we can simply sacrifice our knight, and once they capture our knight, we win their rook. And if they don't block with the pawn, but rather move the king up, we can just play bishop to d4 check, and it's a beautiful checkmate. Next, let's take a look at the move knight to c3. When white plays the move knight to c3, we play our basic Stafford move, bishop to c5. Now here, the most common move is bishop to c4. Now, we play knight to g4, targeting the pawn on f2. It looks very nice to castle here to protect the pawn. However, this is actually a huge blunder because we could play queen to h4, threatening a checkmate. And the only way to stop this checkmate is with pawn to h3. However, now we could play knight takes f2. Here, white has two main options, to either capture with the rook or move their queen. Firstly, if they capture with the rook, we can simply recapture, and we're up in material with a great position. If they move the queen, this is horrible for them, because we could play knight takes h3, and here, the king is forced to move. Let's say the king moves to h1. Now we could play knight to f2 check. This is actually a double check, and here, the king has one place to move. Now we could play queen to h1, a spectacular checkmate. Now let's take a look at the move bishop to c4. When white plays bishop to c4, we can play the classic Stafford move, bishop to c5. Here, the most common move is castling. Now we could play knight to g4, putting pressure on the f2 pawn. However, most players will ignore this as it's already defended by the rook and the king. So common moves in this position include h3, knight to c3, and d3. But all of these moves are actually a mistake for one reason. For example, if white plays h3, we can play knight takes f2. And after this trade, we can actually play a sneaky move, queen to d4 check. And it's a fork to the bishop and the king. So once the king moves, we can simply grab the bishop. Lastly, let's take a look at the move e5. When white plays pawn to e5, we can play knight to e4. Here, a common move is d3, attacking our knight. However, instead of simply moving our knight, we can play bishop to c5, which looks like a blunder as we're simply giving away our knight. However, we can actually play bishop takes f2, an insane sacrifice. If they capture our bishop, we win the queen. If they play king to e2, we can play bishop to g4, and now they're forced to capture our bishop, and we can simply win the queen. This video only covers some of the traps and lines in the Stafford Gambit. If you would like a more in-depth guide, make sure to get this video to 80 likes and let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.